All right, let's dive into a story that is just unbelievable. We're talking about Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961. This was a hijacking that ended in one of the most dramatic water landings ever caught on camera. It's an incredible story, so let's get right to it. So picture this, November 23rd, 1996. A huge passenger jet is just falling. No explosion, no obvious mechanical failure, but it's plummeting toward the Indian Ocean, hundreds of miles from where it's supposed to be. The big question is, how on earth did it get there? And trust me, the answer isn't as simple as a couple of failed engines.
Okay, so our story begins with a hijacking over Africa. What started as a completely routine flight, well, it takes a terrifying turn.
So let's take a look at who and what was on this flight. You've got Captain Lulabate, a super experienced pilot with over 11,000 flight hours. He's flying a Boeing 767. On board, 175 souls in total, a mix of tourist and business travelers. And interestingly, a couple of notable passengers were on that flight, the famous journalist Mo Amen and a U.S. diplomat, Frank Huddle. Everything about this flight screamed normal, a multi-stop trip to the Ivory Coast, just another day at the office.
But then, boom, just minutes after takeoff, that all changes. 3 young men suddenly storm the cockpit. And get this, they're armed with a fire axe and a fire extinguisher they grabbed from inside the plane. They go right for the co-pilot. In a matter of seconds, complete chaos is taken over.
And the first thing they do is issue a chilling threat. They claim there are 11 of them in total and that they have a bomb. If you don't do what we say, they warned, we'll blow this plane out of the sky. Now, was it a bluff? Maybe. But you can't take that chance, right? The crew had to assume it was real. The lives of everyone on that plane were now hanging in the balance.
This is where things get weird. The hijackers make their demand. They want to fly to Australia for political asylum. And their whole plan is based on something they read in the in-flight magazine, that this plane could fly for 11 hours. The problem? The reality? The plane had barely enough fuel for its scheduled short hop. We're talking about 3.5 hours of fuel, not 11. It was an impossible demand from the very beginning.
So this kicks off an incredible battle of wills, a secret game of chess being played at 39,000 feet.
Now, here is a truly wild fact about Captain Abate. This wasn't his first rodeo. I mean, can you even imagine? This was his 3rd hijacking. He'd been hijacked once before and forced to fly to Nairobi, and a second time forced to fly to Sweden. But this one was different. This time, the demand wasn't just difficult, it was physically impossible.
Captain Abate knew that flying out over the open ocean was a suicide mission. So he comes up with a secret plan. He agrees to their demands, tells them, okay, we're going to Australia. But really? He banks the plane and starts flying parallel to the African coastline. His strategy was brilliant. Stay close to land, keep potential airports within reach, and just buy time.
But you can't keep that up forever. Eventually, one of the hijackers looks out the window and sees land. "I still see land," he yells. "Turn the plane now." The gig was up. They were furious, and they forced the captain to turn the plane east directly out over the Indian Ocean. Just like that, his clever plan, his safety net, was gone.
Okay, so now the captain tries something else. A desperate move. He gets Nairobi air traffic control on the radio and puts them on the cockpit speakers so the hijackers can hear everything. You can hear the controller pleading with them, telling them straight up, you don't have the fuel, you need to land in Mombasa. But it was no use. The hijackers just wouldn't listen. They weren't negotiating.
And then it happens. The moment everyone knew was coming. The plane has officially run out of fuel. We've reached the point of no return.
Can you imagine being a passenger on that plane? Suddenly, the captain's voice comes over the intercom, calm as can be, and he says it, the words you never, ever want to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have run out of fuel. We're going to make a crash landing." Just like that, the fear of the hijacking turns into the cold, hard reality that the plane is going down.
In that same announcement, the captain tries one last thing. He asks the passengers to react against the hijackers. But think about it. The phrasing is a bit vague, and everyone still thinks there's a bomb on board. So what happens? Nothing. The passengers are paralyzed by fear and confusion. The captain is still completely alone in this.
And then, one by one, the engines die. First the right, then the left. And suddenly, there's this eerie, deafening silence. This $40 million piece of advanced technology, this massive jet, it's now just a 100-ton glider, falling silently out of the sky.
But not all is lost.
There's this incredible little piece of engineering called a ram air turbine, or RAT for short. It's basically a small propeller that pops out when the engines die. The wind rushing past it spins the blades, and that generates just enough electricity to power the most basic flight controls. It's not much, but it's something. It is literally the last line of defense, giving the pilot a sliver of control.
And this brings us to the crash itself, a tragedy that, unbelievably, was captured on camera.
So even as the plane is gliding towards the ocean, the hijackers are still fighting the pilot. Captain Abate actually manages to line the plane up with the runway on the nearby Comoros Islands. He almost made it, but at the last second, the hijackers wrestle with him for the controls. He loses sight of the runway, loses too much altitude, and now it's too late. The only option left is the ocean.
Inside the cabin, another tragedy is unfolding. The crew gives a crucial instruction: put on your life jackets, but do not inflate them inside the plane. But in the sheer panic of the moment, many people did. And this turned out to be a fatal mistake. When the plane hit the water and the cabin started to flood, those inflated vests acted like buoys, pitting passengers against the ceiling, trapping them underwater.
So why was the crash so violent? Well, it comes down to physics. First, the engines on a 767 hang really low, so they basically acted like giant scoops, grabbing the water and pulling the nose down. Second, the left wing hit the water first, which sent the whole plane into a cartwheel. And finally, the speed was just way too high. The combination of these things just tore the plane to pieces. And just how fast are we talking? 370 kilometers per hour. To put that in perspective, that's over 100 kilometers per hour faster than a normal landing. Why so fast? Well, without engine power, the captain couldn't use the wing flaps to create drag and slow down. He was essentially forced to come in hot. The final human cost was just awful. Out of 175 people on that flight, 125 died. That includes the 3 hijackers and Mo Amin, the journalist we mentioned earlier. But, and this is the incredible part, 50 people survived. Against all odds, 50 people made it out of that wreckage. A true miracle. So what happened afterwards? Well, the 3 hijackers died in the crash. Amazingly, both Captain Abate and his co-pilot survived and were celebrated as heroes, and rightfully so. Their skill in ditching the plane so close to the shore is the only reason those 50 people survived. But the incident also raised a huge red flag about airline security. I mean, the cockpit doors were completely unsecured. It was a major vulnerability that sadly wouldn't really be addressed industry-wide for another 5 years, after 9/11. And that's really what this story leaves us with. You have this incredible machine, this complex system, pushed to its absolute breaking point. It's a story of failure, and it's a story of tragedy, but it's also a story of a person. It really makes you think, when all the technology fails, when a multi-million-dollar jet becomes a simple glider, what does that reveal about the importance of the human element, the skill, the calm, the decisions of the single person at the controls?